The world inside Harry's diner was a small, greasy universe of clattering plates and bubbling coffee pots. For Veronica Bagarella, it was a hiding place. Each day she tied her apron, she was burying her past a little deeper, pretending to be just another waitress trying to get by. But tonight, the fear was a live wire in her chest. Her little brother, Romeo, was in trouble with a loan shark named Mark, and the clock was ticking on his safety. In the corner booth, a man sat like a stone in a river, the noisy world of the diner flowing around him. Stefano Antonino. To the other customers, he was just a handsome man in an expensive suit. But his stillness was a kind of power. He was there to think, to untangle a problem that threatened his entire empire. Someone close to him, a man he trusted, was stealing from the family. The betrayal was a sour taste in his mouth, and he needed to find the traitor before the weakness spread. Staring into his untouched espresso, his lips barely moved. The words that escaped were not English, but a secret, musical language from a forgotten village in the mountains of Sicily. It was a language of his childhood, a code used only by his bloodline. Il lupo veste la pelle dell'agnello, he murmured to himself. The wolf wears the skin of a lamb. He sits at my table, eats my bread, and plots my end. Who among my brothers has a heart this black? Veronica was refilling the sugar shaker at the counter next to his booth, her movements automatic. The strange, flowing words cut through the diner's noise and struck a chord deep in her memory. It was the language of her grandmother, of old stories whispered by the fireplace, a language that was supposed to be her secret, not his. She heard the pain, the frustration in his low voice. It echoed her own helplessness. Without a single conscious thought, driven by an instinct she didn't understand, she responded. She didn't turn her head, keeping her eyes on the sugar. Her voice was a soft, clear whisper in the exact same ancient dialect. A wolf who is full does not hunt. But the one who is always hungry, his eyes give him away. Watch your guard, the one by the door. He watches the money in the cash register, not the street. A hungry man is a desperate man. The silence that fell over Stefano's corner of the diner was heavier than any noise. His head lifted slowly, his dark, intense eyes locking onto her. The shock on his face was absolute. It was an impossibility. This dialect had no written form. It was passed mouth to ear, a sacred trust. And this young woman with tired eyes and flour on her jeans had just spoken it like she'd been born to it. He didn't speak. He just stared, his gaze stripping away her Veronica, disguise layer by layer. Veronica finally met his eyes, and the reality of what she had done turned her blood to ice. She had just tipped over a beehive, and the king bee was now looking right at her. She hurried away, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped the sugar shaker. For the rest of her shift, she felt the weight of his stare like a physical touch. When she finally gathered the courage to look back, his booth was empty. Left behind was $100 bill under the cup and, next to it, a simple black card. No name, no fancy title. Just 10 silver numbers that seemed to pulse with danger. Her manager, Tony, paled when he saw it. That's Stefano Antonino's calling card, he hissed. You don't get a card from a man like him unless he wants something. Big trouble, Veronica. Be careful. Veronica's heart sank. She knew the name. Antonino meant power, the kind that didn't play by the rules. She slipped the card into her pocket, feeling like she was carrying a lit stick of dynamite. The explosion came 2 nights later. She found Romeo hiding in her apartment, his face bruised and terrified. Mark says he's done waiting, Veronica, he sobbed, using her real name. He says if I don't have the money by tomorrow, he's going to make an example of me. Tears of despair streamed down her face. The police were useless. Mark owned half the precinct. She was trapped. In the depths of her panic, her fingers closed around the cold, smooth surface of the black card. It was a leap from a frying pan into a fire, but the frying pan was about to burn her alive. With a shaking hand, she dialed the number. It was answered on the first ring. Antonino. The voice was like dark velvet. The waitress, she choked out. From the diner. I need help. Location. The word was a command, not a question. She gave him her address and hung up, her body trembling with fear and shame. She expected an army of thugs. Instead, 10 minutes later, a single black sedan purred to a stop outside. Stefano Antonino stepped out, alone. He didn't even glance at her building. He simply looked across the street, gave a single sharp nod, and then walked to her door. When she opened it, he filled the frame. "Where is he?" he asked, his voice low. She pointed a shaking finger toward her brother, cowering on the couch. Stefano's eyes scanned the boy, then returned to her. "This Mark. He is a gnat. He will not buzz in your ear again. But the debt remains. Your brother is a liability." "Please," Veronica whispered, the word barely audible. "I'll do anything. Just keep him safe." Stefano studied her, his gaze calculating. "I can make him vanish. A new identity in a new city, a job, a life. He will be beyond the reach of Mark or anyone else forever." Hope, fierce and terrifying, bloomed in her chest. "What is the price?" "You," he said, his voice flat and final. "For 1 month. You will live under my roof. You will be my tutor. You will teach me this coincidence. You will tell me how an American waitress knows the tongue of my ancestors." It was an offer she couldn't refuse. It was a prison sentence with a velvet rope. But looking at Romeo's terrified face, she saw only one path forward. "Okay," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'll go with you." He gave a curt nod. "Grab a bag. Only what you need." An hour later, Veronica was in the back of the silent sedan, watching her old life disappear behind her. Stefano sat beside her, a silent, powerful fortress of a man. She had traded one monster for another, but this one had looked at her problem and offered a solution, not just more threats. He was a mystery, and she was now his prisoner, his guest, his puzzle. The quiet boss had found his whisperer, and the first chapter of their dangerous story had just begun, leaving them both on a cliff's edge, unsure if they were about to fall or fly. The silence in Stefano's mansion was different from the diner's noise. It was a thick, heavy quiet, filled with unspoken questions. 4 days, Veronica had felt Stefano's eyes on her, studying her as if she were a complex code he couldn't crack. He'd test her, speaking in the old dialect about the weather or the food, and she would answer perfectly, her accent as natural as his. The tension between them was a live wire, humming with suspicion and a strange, growing curiosity. It finally broke one rainy afternoon. They were in his library, a room of dark wood and old books. Stefano stood by the fireplace, his back to her. "This game is over, Veronica," he said, his voice low. "The truth. Who are you?" Veronica's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew the time had come. She took a deep, shaky breath. "My name is Veronica Bagarella. But my grandfather, his name was Don Vittorio Bagarella." The name landed in the room like a bomb. Stefano turned slowly, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. Don Vittorio Bagarella had been the legendary, ruthless boss of the family that Stefano's own father had waged a bloody war against. The family the Antoninos had crushed to rise to power. "He was the last great boss," Veronica continued, her voice trembling. "After your father, after what happened, my grandmother took my mother and fled to America. She changed our name, hid us. She taught me the old dialect not as a tool, but as a memory. It was all she had left of home. It was a song, a story, not a weapon. I hate that world. I never, ever wanted any part of it." Tears welled in her eyes. "I just wanted to keep my brother safe." Stefano stared at her, a storm of emotions in his eyes. There was anger at the lie, at the deception. But beneath it was a dawning, horrible understanding. "My father," he began, his voice rough. "He spoke of that war. He said, things were done that should not be spoken of." He looked at Veronica, not as a boss looking at a liar, but as a man seeing the ghost of his family's sins. The anger faded, replaced by a deep, surprising guilt. "Your family, my family, we destroyed yours." In that moment, the wall between them didn't just crack, it crumbled. They were no longer just a boss and a waitress, but two people bound by a painful history they never asked for. The air in the room shifted, charged with a new, dangerous understanding. That new understanding was tested sooner than anyone could have imagined. A few nights later, Stefano's most trusted men were gathered in the mansion's main hall. Among them was the head of his security, a man named Rocco. Veronica was sitting quietly in a corner, observing as Stefano had asked her to. She saw Rocco's hand twitch toward his gun a second before anyone else. "Stefano, down!" she screamed. Chaos erupted. Rocco the traitor fired. But Stefano, reacting to Veronica's warning, moved just in time. The bullet meant for his heart grazed his side instead. He grunted in pain, stumbling. In an instant, he wasn't pushing Veronica away to save himself. He was pulling her behind him, using his own body as a shield as his loyal men returned fire. He grabbed her hand, his own bloody, and pulled her through a hidden panel in the wall into a narrow, dark passage. They stumbled through the darkness, the sounds of the fight fading behind them, finally collapsing in a small, secure, safe room. Stefano leaned against the wall, breathing heavily, his hand pressed to the bleeding wound on his side. "You saved my life," he gasped, his eyes finding hers in the dim emergency light. "You were shot protecting me," she whispered, her hands trembling as she reached for him. "Why?" "I couldn't let him hurt you," he said, his voice raw. "I don't care what your name is. I care about you." The space between them vanished. There, surrounded by cold concrete and the smell of dust and blood, the last of their barriers fell. It wasn't a gentle meeting of lips this time. It was a desperate, fiery collision. His hands, stained with his own blood, cupped her face as he kissed her with a hunger that stole her breath. She kissed him back with equal passion, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. It was a kiss filled with the terror of near death, the relief of survival, and the explosive truth of their feelings. It was a promise, sealed in the darkness, that they were in this together, no matter the cost. As they caught their breath, foreheads touching, a fierce clarity settled over Veronica. "I know how to trap him," she said, her voice steady now. Stefano looked at her, intrigued. "How?" "He thinks you're dead or dying. He'll be scrambling, trying to take control. We need to make him overconfident." She laid out her plan, a clever web of lies and misdirection using the old dialect as their secret weapon. She would pretend to be a terrified hostage, feeding Rocco false information, while Stefano remained hidden, gathering his strength and his most loyal men. The plan was set in motion at dawn. Veronica, pretending to be in a panic, contacted Rocco. Speaking in a terrified whisper, she told him Stefano was dead and that she had found a secret ledger, a fake she and Stefano had prepared, that detailed all of Stefano's hidden accounts. She said she was scared and would give it to him in exchange for money and safe passage out of the city. Rocco, greedy and arrogant, took the bait. He agreed to meet her alone in the old shipyards. That night, the air was cold and salty. Veronica stood under a flickering docklight, holding the fake ledger. Rocco emerged from the shadows, a smug smile on his face. "The last bagarella," he sneered. "Hand it over." "It's in the old dialect," Veronica said, her voice clear and steady, no longer afraid. "Can you read it?" As Rocco frowned at the book, a strong voice cut through the darkness, speaking the ancient words. It says, "The traitor's greed is his own noose." Rocco spun around. Stefano stood there, alive and strong, surrounded by his men. The look on Rocco's face was one of pure, undiluted horror. He had been outsmarted, not by a rival gangster, but by the woman he had underestimated. Back at the mansion, with Rocco dealt with, Stefano looked at Veronica not with gratitude, but with awe. He took her hands in his. "I spent my life building walls, trusting no one," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought strength was being alone, being hard. But your strength is different. It's smart, it's brave, it's loyal. I don't want a translator or a teacher. I don't even want just a lover." He took a deep breath. "I want you as my partner, my equal. Rule with me. Not from the shadows, but by my side." Veronica's heart swelled. This was everything her family had lost, everything she had run from. But she saw the man before her, not the ghost of his father. She saw a chance to change things, to build something new from the ashes of their family's hate. "Yes," she said, her voice firm. "But we do it my way too. No more hurting people who don't deserve it. We protect the innocent. We make the business smarter, not just crueler. We build something that lasts, not something that just inspires more revenge." Stefano looked at the woman who was the daughter of his enemy, the woman who had saved his life and his empire. He saw his future in her eyes. "For you," he vowed, pulling her close. "We will build a new kingdom. Together." The ghost of Don Vittorio Bagarella could finally rest. His legacy was not ended, it was transformed, reborn in his granddaughter, who would not conquer with bullets, but with a clever mind and a fearless heart. A new queen had indeed risen. The secret wedding was held at dawn in the mansion's sun-drenched garden, surrounded by a handful of the only people they truly trusted. There were no ancient vows or distant relatives. Stefano looked into Veronica's eyes, his own shimmering with a peace no one had ever seen in him before. "I was a king of shadows," he whispered, his voice for her alone. "You are my light. I am yours forever." Veronica, dressed not in white but in a deep, sunset-red gown, smiled, her heart full. "And I am yours," she replied. "Our family, our rules." Their kiss sealed a promise stronger than any blood oath. But in their world, a light always attracts moths. Dario, the aging boss of a rival family, saw Stefano's public love not as strength, but as a fatal weakness. "Antonino has gone soft," he spat to his men. "He's ruled by his heart now. And hearts are easy to break." He decided to strike at what he thought was the most fragile part, Veronica. A week later, Veronica's armored car was ambushed on a quiet street. As her guards fought, Dario's men swarmed her vehicle, prying the door open. They expected a screaming, terrified socialite. What they found was the granddaughter of Don Vittorio Bagarella. As a thug reached for her, Veronica didn't flinch. She moved with a fury born of a past she had tried to escape, driving the sharp heel of her shoe into his foot before grabbing his wrist and twisting it with a move her grandmother had vaguely described once. She fought like a wildcat, her cries alerting the remaining guards who swiftly overwhelmed the attackers. She stood panting in the middle of the chaos, her dress torn, a fire in her eyes that promised war. The message was sent: Stefano's queen did not need a king to defend her. Dario was furious but not defeated. He had a deeper, more poisonous plan. He had found Veronica's brother, Romeo, living his new life in Seattle. He spent months feeding him lies, showing him forged documents that proved Stefano had always planned to kill both him and Veronica once he had no more use for her. He twisted Romeo's fear and love for his sister into a burning hatred for Stefano. The final battle was not in a dark alley, but at the Antonino family's dockside warehouse, the heart of their business. Stefano and Veronica walked in, ready for a fight, but they were not ready for who stood beside Dario, holding a gun with a shaking hand. "Romeo!" Veronica's voice was a broken whisper. "Stay away from me, Veronica." Romeo yelled, his eyes wild with betrayal. "He told me everything. You're with him. The man who destroyed our family." Dario laughed, a cruel, grating sound. "I've turned his blood against you, Antonino. How does it feel?" A fierce gunfight erupted, the warehouse echoing with thunder. But amidst the chaos, Veronica's focus was only on her brother. Stefano provided cover, firing at Dario's men, but he let Veronica fight her own battle for her brother's soul. "Romeo, listen to me," Veronica shouted, ducking behind a crate. She didn't speak in English. She used the secret dialect, the language of their grandmother, the language of lullabies and secrets. "He is lying to you. Look at me. Have my eyes ever lied to you? Stefano saved you. He saved us both." The familiar, musical words cut through the noise and Romeo's confusion. He faltered, his aim dropping slightly. "He has documents," he stammered back in the old tongue. "Forged by a snake." Veronica cried, her voice cracking with emotion. "He found you because Dario is weak and Stefano is strong. He wants to use our family's pain to win his little war. I love him, Romeo. And he loves me. He is not his father, and I am not our grandfather. We are building something new." Tears streamed down Romeo's face. The gun in his hand felt suddenly heavy and wrong. He looked at Dario's smug face, then back at his sister's pleading, honest eyes. With a cry of anguish, he turned his gun and fired at Dario's shoulder. The betrayal was complete. With their enemy stunned and leaderless, Stefano's men quickly subdued the rest. The war was over. 10 years later, the morning sun warmed the sprawling garden of a beautiful, new estate. It wasn't a fortress of fear like the old mansion, but a home filled with light. Stefano, his hair now touched with silver at the temples, sat with his arm around Veronica, who leaned her head contentedly on his shoulder. On the lawn, their 2 children, a dark-haired boy named Luca and a little girl with her mother's fiery spirit named Angelina, chased a butterfly, their laughter echoing in the peaceful air. Stefano's business was different now. The brutal, street-level crimes were a thing of the past. His empire was a mix of legitimate investments, high-stakes trading, and a few, very discreet operations that hurt no one innocent. He had kept his promise. It was smarter, kinder, and stronger than ever. Veronica was no longer a waitress, a hidden heir, or just a wife. She was Veronica Antonino, a name spoken with respect and a little healthy fear. She was her husband's equal partner in every decision, her clever mind and fearless heart guiding their family into a prosperous and stable future. She watched her children play, a world away from the scared girl in the diner. "We did it," she whispered to Stefano. "We didn't let their history become our future. We made our own." Stefano kissed her forehead. "Our legacy, amore mio," he said softly. "Not theirs. Ours." It was more than a happy ending. It was a triumph. They had taken the shattered pieces of their family's bloody past and built something beautiful, something that would last. A story that began with a whisper in a diner had become a legend of love, strength, and a new beginning. We hope you were on the edge of your seat following Stefano and Veronica's unforgettable journey. Their story proves that love can bloom in the darkest of places and rewrite any destiny. Did this story of fierce love and redemption capture your heart? Subscribe to our channel for more gripping, unpredictable romance tales that will keep you hooked until the very last word. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Are you in the United States, feeling the tension, or in Germany, cheering for Veronica's strength? We love connecting with our global audience. What was your favorite plot twist? Was it Veronica's true heritage, Romeo's betrayal, or the final garden scene? Share your thoughts and feelings below. We read every single one. Thank you for watching. Until the next great adventure.